Hi, welcome back to the continuing lecture in uh, uh, business math. Our topic today is simple discount. Now, to understand what simple discount is, we need to introduce a uh, new terminology called, promissory note. Now, actually, the reason we have been talking about simple interest in the previous videos is actually to serve as the foundation for simple discount. Okay, because if you remember, right, I said simple interest rate is not used in the capital market. And what's a capital market? A capital market is a long-term financial market, right? So in the long-term financial market, I said it's compound interest that is being used, not the simple interest, right? And the simple interest is reserved for mainly for short-term financial market called money market. But in the examples, right, um, uh, some, you know, maturities longer than 1 year has been used. I mean, of course, as a pedagogical example, it was, inevitable to use um, longer maturities than 1 year. But um, I also gave you a caveat that this uh, that was for only for practice purpose, right? And the reason that we had to use such examples um, for simple interest was all to basically train you to prepare you for um, to familiarize to make you familiarize. I mean, I'm sorry, to familiarize you with the simple interest, the way the simple interest works, right? And the simple interest is more frequently used um, in the situation where they have to discount the promissory note. So, what is the promissory note? First of all, a promissory note is a short-term debt, right? Short-term debt instrument. Of course, that means the maturity is under 1 year, and literally, promissory notes. Uh, it may not be difficult to understand what it means. It's a promise to pay. It's a note that promises to pay. Uh, so it sounds like it's an IOU. It sounds like, but actually, it's not that simple. It's an IOU. That's true. But you might think, oh, then I can write a promissory note. You can write an IOU, but then problem is, who honors your IOU, right? Can you walk into an Apple store and buy an iPhone 10 and pay with an IOU? Will they honor it? No, absolutely not. Why? Because your IOU is nothing but a piece of paper, right? With no power to uh, guarantee that payment. No matter right now, you may claim, I'm a very good person. I'm a credit-worthy person. I'm very trustworthy. My word is my, bond. Uh, my bond is my honor, blah, blah, blah. No matter what you say, right? And um, because why? It is not a commercial paper, right? In other words, promissory note is an IOU used by businesses, okay? Not by individuals. A personal promissory note may be honored only within a very close circle, like family and very close friends. And if you're a family and a very close friend, then you may just, take your, take they may take your IOU, meaning that they are willing to, just, part with up to $100, maybe, they're just, giving it away to you, right? Um, of course, I'm not saying you're a dishonorable person, but, word of mouth is nothing. You have to understand that word of mouth has no guaranteeing power, right? That, you cannot walk into a bank and try to get a loan just based on your word of mouth, right? There must be a lot of supporting documents that have to prove your credit worthiness. Makes sense? So, promissory note, don't even think about it. Don't even think, oh, promissory note equals IOU. IOU is such a easy concept. Uh, but again, a promissory note is only issued by businesses, and therefore another name for IOU is commercial paper. But again, the term IOU and commercial paper are used in slightly different contexts. Okay, I'm not going to go into uh, the distinction at this point. Um, but then, why would companies issue promissory note? So, uh, suppose you are a computer manufacturer like Dell, right? And then Dell makes computers, but that doesn't mean Dell makes everything, right? This is not, um, this is not even a secret, right? It's a public knowledge, right? Because parts and components, something like uh, keyboard, right? Mouse, right? The LED display panel. All these things are made by um, third-party manufacturers, right? Uh, Dell just outsources these parts and components, and they assemble, right? These components. So um, only elementary school kids would think a manufacturer would make everything from the scratch, like a car company, Ford Motors, would make everything from tires, in bolts and nuts, everything. A grown up wouldn't even, that's too naive if a grown up thinks that way. That Ford Motor Company makes even bolts and nuts and rubber, right? So think about it. A manufacturer like Dell would, and the memory chip that goes into uh, the computer, Dell computer, is made by uh, some third-party memory chip manufacturers like Intel or Samsung or Hynix, or right. Also, The hard drive is made by also other manufacturers like Toshiba or Seagate or a lot of. So these parts and components are outsourced, right? And so suppose Dell is making Dell has a production plan for 10,000 units of Model X, right? And then they will need to outsource things like mouse, right? Let's say, or like touchpad, or keyboard. So let's say keyboard manufacturer, right? Um, so they will have to order 10,000 keyboards from a keyboard manufacturer, and when Dell buys 10,000 keyboards, there are four payment options largely, right? Dell has four payment options. Of course, they can pay cash up front, right? Cash. If each keyboard is like $20, they can pay, 20 times 10,000, so that's going to be like $200,000, right? They can pay cash up front, or they can pay with check, right? They can pay by check. Or three, they can pay with credit card. Four, they can pay with promissory note. Now think about it. Which payment method would Dell prefer the most? If someone says, if any one of you say, cash, I'm sorry, you're very wrong, right? Well, cash would be preferred. Of course, if you pay cash, then the seller will be very happy, right? From seller's perspective, receiving cash is the best thing, right? Why? I'm going to explain this to you right now. Actually, from the buyer's perspective, promissory note is the most preferred choice, right? And the second preferred choice is credit card. And the third preferred choice is check then. And the least preferred choice is cash. Why? First of all, think of why is cash the least preferred? It's called opportunity cost, right? It's called opportunity. Why? Suppose you pay out $200,000 in cash right now, right? What does that mean? They are losing the opportunities that they could have put that $200,000 into some lucrative investment opportunity and earn some return on it. For example, if they can defer payment for 2 months at least, defer payment for 2 months. In other words, defer cash payment for 2 months. They can, in the meantime, they can put those $200,000 into some stock, some hot stock, of course, stocks have huge, stocks come with, huge risk. You may lose, everything. But let's say, fortunately, they put, they had very good timing, so they put it into a Tesla, and Tesla is, last year, Tesla grew almost like, right before the COVID-19, outbreak. Tesla and the COVID-19 induced, market crash. Tesla was, from earlier last year, 2019, earlier 2019, Tesla was trading at around $200. And right before COVID-19, they were trading at around, $900. Now, Tesla is around, 1,200, 1,400, I guess. The latest I checked was, like 1,400. Of course, it depends on you. It will change by the time you watch this video. Then it will change. It will have changed. But let's say last year, Dell deferred uh, deferred this payment for uh, 2 months, and then bought Tesla when it was like $200, and in 2 months it went up to $600. Let's say, right? That's over just 2 months. It made right from it made what from 200 to 300 600. uh, that's a 300% return, right? I mean, just the net return alone is 200% net return, because uh, the capital gains is $400. Uh, so the net return alone is 200%. Gross return is, of course, 300%. Gross return is not uh, a pure return, right? Because it's already including the original uh, price, right? But anyway, why would you forego such an opportunity? If you, of course, you have to take the risk. But if you made a uh, you know entry at the right timing, and you made an exit at the right timing, uh, in just two months, you would have realized like 400% return. So that's why they don't. Uh, that's called opportunity cost, because if you had paid cash, you would have lost that opportunity, right? So cash is the least preferred payment method from the seller's perspective, but from the buyer's perspective, uh, it's the most preferred um, payment method, for the same reason, because the buyer could have also put it into Tesla and made, in 2 months, right, 200% net return. Now, so then let's think about it. Um, if you paid with check, right? Check is, so because I explained, what cash, why cash is least preferred. Now, so cash is least preferred by the buyer because it doesn't buy you any time, right? Now, if you paid with check, it buys you a little more time than cash, but it's almost instantaneous. I mean, it's not just as instantaneous as cash, but suppose you paid with check. How long does it take to clear? Usually between 3 days to 1 week, right? Um, Large amounts like $200,000 may take up to a week, 5 days to up to a week. Um, uh, but usually smaller amounts are usually cleared within a day or up to 3 days, right? So it doesn't buy you that much time, because you know your bank account will go down, within 3 days, by $200,000. And then, for the same reason or for similar reason, right? Um, the next second preferred method. I mean, I started from the least preferred and third preferred, and then second preferred method is then, of course, credit card, because credit card buys you at least 1 month, isn't it right? You make the payment. The credit card company pays the seller, and then uh, they will, you will, usually, you will need, they give you 1 month to make the payment. So it buys you time. Now, promissory note is then the most preferred payment method, because it can buy you time just theoretically, I'm sorry, theoretically, up to like 270 days. Of course, theoretically, anything under 1 year is theoretically possible uh, maturity, but that doesn't mean in reality it is really feasible, because in reality, um, most commonly used maturity date for promissory note is like 60 days, right? It can go up to 90, 120, but then think about it. Who's going to accept promissory note that has maturity longer than um, 90 days or 60? First of all, if a company is not receiving payment cash, if the company uh, doesn't have cash flow, right? Of course, promissory note is also part of cash flow, but you have to understand that it's not really cash, right? I mean, it's just liquid asset. Promissory note is just liquid asset. You can convert it into cash, but it's not uh, directly cash. Now, what I'm trying to say is um, promissory note uh, most commonly, buys your time, buys your time up to 60 days. That means, from the buyer's perspective, um, it's the most preferred. But that means from the seller's perspective, this is the least preferred. Why? Because uh, you have to wait 60 days to receive cash, right? So promissory note is a part of the accounts payable from the buyer's perspective, and from the seller's perspective, it is part of the accounts receivable. But then here's the thing. You might wonder, so can this seller reject promissory note? I mean, can they insist on receiving cash? No, in reality, no. Why? Look, it's like saying, suppose you go to you are a department store, or let's say you are a small store, and you insist on receiving only cash. We don't accept credit card. I know some restaurants, right, insist on um, receiving cash only. You can do that. You can afford to do that if your business is so booming. You cannot, you know, the customers are lining up, around the corner. Queue is going all, 7 blocks. You cannot accommodate all of them, and then you're in a position to, the demand is so huge. You're in a position to demand only cash payment, right? Some restaurants are like that, like Cats. I don't know if they are in a position to do that anymore, but the pastrami, a famous pastrami restaurant. Um, but uh, even if you're a great retail business, you cannot insist. I mean, you're doing a very you're doing very well. Your business is like booming like crazy. But still, if you limit the business to only cash business, then you are limiting your potential maximum revenue, right? You're limiting yourself to, I mean, you're putting a limit to your potential, you're putting a limit to your potential revenue, right? So that's obviously not a good idea. But another thing is, think about the power politics, between the buyer and seller. I mean, Dell is a manufacturer, right? And it's a huge, big company, right? Dell is a big company. And think about, keyboard manufacturer. How much power do you think a keyboard manufacturer can have? How much, in other words, how much muscle can it flex in this, biocellular dynamics? Hmm? Usually the part manufacturers, component and part manufacturers are relatively small companies, right? They don't have like, the technology that, that everyone is, craving for, right? I mean, chip manufacturers like, semiconductor, right? Chip manufacturers, CPU manufacturers, they have, they are also big companies, right? They have technologies that that are proprietary to, I mean, not it's not like anybody can have that technology. It's a state of the art technology, and then their presence in the market, their size and their weight in the market is also as big as, Dell. Chip manufacturers like Samsung or, their weight in the market is, probably greater than many times, way more, way greater than probably Dell. But because, they are also very, very big companies, but um, keyboard is relatively low tech compared to like, semiconductor, compared to other, crucial components of electronic uh, parts of, computer. And these companies are relatively small, and there are so many competitors, right? So if this keyboard manufacturer is being very picky about the payment method, it's to their detriment. It's only to their detriment, isn't it right? Um, the order from a big company like big custom client like Dell is almost like, their annual sales revenue, right? And if they get a contract, like, exclusive, supplier contract, right? The contract may be binding for like, 2 years or 5 years, and then this is like a huge, order that will sustain this company for many years. So they don't want to upset such a big client, right? So although the promissory note is not the most preferred, right? It's the least preferred actually from the seller's perspective. They cannot say no. You have to understand that, right? So they will have to take it. And here's the thing. Now, usually the promissory note, actually promissory note looks like a check, right? It's a, commercial paper, so it looks like a some, kind of check. The only difference is that the promissory note has maturity, right? So that means, this note becomes due, in 60 days. Or, they put the calendar date on it, and then um, uh, also it carries interest. Why? It's only fair because think about it. Some sellers are not, very happy to take promissory note. And then, if you are a relatively small buyer, right? If you're a small buyer and trying to pay with promissory note, uh, the power politics or the power dynamics between, a big seller and small buyer is quite the opposite. And then the buyer will have to then, to facilitate or to make it easier for um the seller to accept their promissory note, uh, what will they do? They will pay interest to compensate for the foregone interest or foregone opportunity to earn interest uh, from the sellers, at the seller's end. Because if seller takes promissory notes, and if it is 2 months promissory note, 60-day promissory note, they will forego this opportunity to earn return on the money, right? So they pay something equivalent to the prevailing market rate. Of course, in the idea is this buyer uh, thinks that they can use this fund in the meantime and make invest in something that would give them higher return. For example, if the interest rate on the promissory note is 3%, and uh, this buyer is sure that they can make on average 6% using this fund for the next 60 days, then um, they can more than the return from using that fund more than pays for the interest on the promissory note, right? Don't you think? This is the idea behind it. So a promissory note has interest rate on it, and the interesting is um, it can be negotiated. What I'm saying is, not between the seller and buyer. I'm gonna get to this, later, but with the third party. Okay, so I will have to stop the video here. Stop, and then I will come back to this in the next video. Stop recording.